Hi, everyone. My name is Nancy. Hi, Nancy. Hello. I'm a very, very grateful member of Al-Anon. You know what, though? I don't really love to laugh. For some reason, we're all different. Isn't that incredible? We're all different. I love to read. I love to think seriously about things. I love to sleep. I love to, but okay, laughing is all right, but I don't love to laugh. It was very hard for me to hear that. Too much laughter for me, seriously. So isn't that funny? Big room, large nation, as I've heard people say before. Big, big world full of all different kinds of people. I'll tell you what I really love. I came to my spot here, and it's like overflowing with gifts. And it felt incredible to see it. There's like a lei, there's a, as my husband said, the county fair best pie. There's a heart, there's a red heart that says I'm loved, and there are gifts that I haven't opened, a couple bags of gifts underneath, and there's a coin, and there's dead fish floating and all of these things. And a beautiful meal, and I just really, when I sat down, I thought, we take really good care of each other. We take really good care of each other, I think we take pleasure in giving to each other. It's such a wonderful community to be part of. Wonderful community. And I have I don't know how many years ago, Emil Say would know, but I don't know how many years ago, I went to a convention, and I had a commitment at the literature table, and I sat down next to 7 years ago, I sat down next to this lovely woman who, I don't know, maybe she had a month or something, and we fell in love with each other. Just talking about Al-Anon, and we don't go to the same meetings, and we don't see each other very often, but every time I see her, I'm reminded of, actually what I'm reminded of is how I know how to give love. And that's really great for me. It's easy for me to say, thank you. You all do such a good job of loving me. But when I see her, I kind of go, well done, Nancy. You learned how to be a loving person. And so I guess I'm telling you of the things that are helping me get ready to do this talk today. And one was all the lovely stuff, and one was seeing that person who reminds me of something wonderful. And I have many wonderful friends here. I have a dear friend who gave me her lipstick. I'm just a unapologetic hippie who's never changed, who I guess maybe I'll wear lipstick because I looked in the mirror, frankly, and it didn't look too good. And my husband said the phrase war paint to me. So I thought, all right, I'll put some lipstick on. And I did. And I thank a dear, dear friend for that. But, and then I listened to Understanding Ourselves, because that's a very powerful reading for me. And although it was kind of silly to have Ellen talk about directing it to Scott, truth is, right before she started, I was going to nudge him and say, listen to this. But I would have said it with a serious demeanor. But I wanted the same thing. It's the truth. I wanted him to pay attention, so there you go. I'm very happy to be here. I feel very, very loved and taken care of, well hosted, and there was a gorgeous basket in my room that it had all this Excelsior in it that I got all over the place when I pulled things out, so I have little junk on the floor now. Anyway, I'm happy, and I thank you for your kind taking care of me. And I'm going to try to tell you a little bit about what I used to be like before I came to Al-Anon and what happened to me and what I'm like today. I grew up, oh gosh, sometimes I just think, oh, do I really have to tell this story? I just would rather do something else. But I will tell you the story because once I was a bitter, scared woman, and then I came to Al-Anon, and I began to change by working the steps, having a relationship with a sponsor, going to meetings, doing service, and reading literature. And now I'm not bitter, and I feel whole. So wow, what a big difference. I was kind of unhappy and scared and trying to control everything, and now I'm kind of happy and at peace, and I feel like a whole woman. So I've got a lot to be grateful for, and I hope I can tell you a little bit about how it happened. I grew up I just don't want to do this. Oh! I got to do it. He just said you got to do it. Okay, I got to do it.
That'll do it for you.
Got to do it. Before I sit down to eat, I'm a vegetarian. I have a different plate than everybody else, and I just didn't like the way it was arranged. So I needed to roll my sleeves up, and I had got a different plate to pour it all down. And I thought, God, it's really work to be yourself. It's hard work to be yourself. And, but here I go. Okay, here I go. Nancy, I'm Nancy. I was born in Detroit. Thank you. The Motor City. I was born in the Motor City. A day ago, I said to Scott something about my son. I said, he's a pauper. Scott says, what's a pauper? I said, he's a pauper. Scott said, what is a pauper? Where's a pauper? What I really meant was that he was a pauper. A pauper. But in Detroit, you say a pauper. So I'm from Detroit. I grew up in Detroit. I did not grow up in an alcoholic family. I had 2 sisters who I don't think have drinking problems today. I had 2 parents who were just as stable and as kind as they could be. They didn't have problems with alcoholism. And they did a pretty good job of parenting. I thank them for that. They were good parents. But for some wacky reason, I didn't want to be like them. And I didn't want to be like anybody I knew. And I wanted to kick out the jams, actually. And I wanted to get in trouble. And I wanted to have a really, a kind of a dark, like a kind of a miserable is not the right word. I wanted to have like a underground kind of life. So I was always looking for somebody very difficult and very crazy. And if you keep looking, you will find, if they build it, right? So that was what I did, and I kept hooking up with very difficult gentlemen. Very when they were 12, I guess they weren't gentlemen, but difficult boys, difficult guys, difficult teenagers, difficult college guys, and finally, I was in New York. I moved to New York, and I was in a theater, and I looked up on the stage, and it was I was looking at show where there were a bunch of guys, kind of like in chorus style, all standing in a row, and I look. I said, no, not that one. Too short, too tall, too healthy, too boring, blah, blah. And I just looked right at Scott, and I went, that's the one for me. And luckily for me, he felt the same way, and so we began what he sometimes called our 10-year trip to Hades together. We, today is Yom Kippur, Jewish holiday, and part of why we found each other, and part of what remains kind of an undercurrent of our relationship is our being Jewish together, and when I met him, I had already had the experience in my life of having a guy in my life that I was sure could not be a heroin addict because he was Jewish, and I told everybody that there's no such thing. So once again, I looked at him and I thought, oh, he's trouble, but he can't be an alcoholic because he's Jewish, and there's no such thing as a Jewish alcoholic. At the same time, the most attractive thing about him to me was his stories of debauchery, actually. I loved what he would tell me about his drug use. I knew he was an alcoholic. We drank together. He drank all the time. I knew he was a drinker. And I sometimes, as our disease progressed and and our lives got messier and messier, I would call my parents for help. And one of the tactics that I had when I called my parents, because, I'm sad to say, relationships just fizzled away. I mean, when I think of calling my parents, I know now what it feels like to have a loving relationship with them, what it feels like when I hear their voices, and what a good daughter I feel like. So different from what this was like. What this was like was, okay, we need $600 for the rent, and we need $200 for that phone bill that we haven't paid for 4 months. Okay, so I got to call my parents. That's the deal. Hi, Lester. I probably wouldn't even call them Mom and Dad when I called them on the phone. Hi, Lester. And what I would say to get the money was, Scott's going to go to AA. And that was my idea so I absolutely knew I was with an alcoholic, because my way to get money from my parents was to say, okay, there's a problem, and don't worry, we're going to solve it. Scott's going to go to AA. But I don't think I ever mentioned that to Scott. And Scott never said he was going. It's not like he told me he was going to AA. It was a ploy that I used. But it reminds me that really inside I knew that was a problem. And oh my gosh, I just remembered a very sad story. It's like today I'm trying to balance the joy with a little bit of my misery. But maybe by the time I'm done, we'll have some level. I have 2 sons, gorgeous, incredible, now men, 2 beautiful sons. When they were young, when I got to Al-Anon, they were 3 and 6. Before I got to Al-Anon, we were in a fast food restaurant, and my eldest son walked up to somebody that he didn't know sitting at another table, and he said, "Hi, my mom has cancer and my dad is an alcoholic." I heard him say it, and I walked up to the table, and I said, "Hello, I'm this young man's mother." I said, "I might have cancer, but I can tell you my husband is not an alcoholic." That it was easier for me to admit I didn't have cancer. I mean, it was easier for me to say that I had cancer than for me to say that my husband was an alcoholic at McDonald's, Oh, God. So I was really confused. It's cunning, baffling, and powerful. I'm so convinced of that. And I was so confused and just saw it but didn't see it, and loved it and hated it, and used it, used the mess and used what a mess he was to build myself up. I was not a healthy woman. And something happened in 1984. We knew something was going to happen in 1984, right? That was the name of the book. 1984. Something's going to happen. But something happened in 1984. I came home from taking my children to their fabulous nursery school that we couldn't afford, and I found my husband passed out on the kitchen floor, and it was kind of funny, I remember, because he had a frying pan in his hand on the floor, and there were in fact eggs in the frying pan, uncooked. And he was on and the burner was on, and so something had happened between the plan for the omelet and the overdose, okay? So he was lying on the floor, and I walked in, and I was thinking about Max today for some reason, and I remembered hearing her once when I first started talking about walking over Paul, finding him collapsed and walking over him. And I remember hearing that and going, what does that mean? I just had no idea what that meant. Does that mean you don't like him? Does that mean that it's good for you? I just didn't understand that in any way. But what I can tell you is that when I saw my husband passed out on the floor before I came to Al-Anon, I kicked him. That's all I did. I just kicked him. Like a wake-up kick. It was like a little nudge. I kicked him. And I said, Scott, what's going on? What's going on? And he kind of came out and he said, I am so exhausted. I'm so tired. And I left him there. But, now I have to say this thing that always comes to me when I tell this story, which is that, of course, I don't remember what I said that day, really, honestly, because it was before I knew what I was doing. So this is kind of like the general idea of what happened that day. Okay. But this I can tell you for sure. I went upstairs to the room. The room was Scott's room. Scott's room was the room with the holes in the wall where you throw books, and they go through the wall, and the fist holes and things like that. So I went into that room, and I picked up the phone, and I called the doctor, and I said, Scott, I forgot to tell you. What I found in that room were the empty vial of pills and the empty bottle of vodka. So I called the doctor. I said, my husband, and I found the empty bottle, and I found the empty vial. I said, what should I do? And the doctor said, hang up, dial 911. He needs his stomach, he needs to go to the hospital. He's overdosed on pills. I hung up the phone. I thought, I've got a lot of neighbors. I thought nobody knows there's anything wrong in our house. Maybe I can, I don't know what I thought. I thought. And then I thought, I'll call another doctor. Maybe they'll have a whole other idea of what to do. And I did. I called another doctor, and I love him to this day. He said just the thing I needed to hear. He said, I told him what was on the pills. I said, it happened to be codeine with aspirin. I said, he drank and he took 24 or whatever, however you do it, like by milligrams or something like this, of codeine with aspirin. And the doctor said, that it's the aspirin that's dangerous. I have no idea if that's true or not. But he said it's very serious to take that much aspirin. And then I felt like, oh, okay, he has an aspirin overdose. Anybody could do that. Anybody could take 100 aspirin. So then I called, and they came, and they come, gangbusters, by the way, if you've never had this experience before. It's not just one car. It's not just one officer. There's the fire engine and the police and the paramedics, and they all came to our little apartment in North Hollywood, and everybody saw, and they came upstairs and they walked in, and the first thing that the firefighter guy said to me was, ma'am, I'm sure he called me ma'am, do you have a place to go? Do you have a plan for if your husband is physically abusive? I thought, why is he, who does he think I am? I think is what I said. Why would this man say this to me? And then I got I had one of those pre-programmed moments of clarity where I thought, he does this all the time. And he knows what these kind of houses are like. And he's saying that to me because that's what happens. That's what happens in a house where there's drinking and drug overdoses. People get beat up and people need an extra set of keys. And I went, oh my God. I think that for a minute I felt like if someone was really talking to me, felt like he sees me. That's what I felt. I said, this person knows me. He knows what's going on in here. So we went to the hospital. We took Scott to the hospital. It was one of those, I know all you beautiful Al-Anons know exactly how to do this. I dropped the kids off at nursery school in the morning. I took my husband in for an overdose in the afternoon. I picked them up. I was a little bit into extended time, but not too much, Picked him up from nursery school and brought him back home. And thought to myself, this is it. That was the beauty. I went to bed so happy that night because I really thought this was so embarrassing that he will never, ever do anything like this again because he must be really embarrassed. And I remind myself of that because I always, well, not always, because I'm healthier now. But I used to always use my will and have a huge plan of how to fix things and how to change him. And so my idea that day was that it had gone this is the kind of day that you never drink after, ever. It's hard to still not feel that way, but But there's my mixed up insides and then there's reality. And reality was that Scott wasn't really embarrassed, I don't think. And that no matter what, he wasn't done that day. He just wasn't done that day. And time passed, and I started acting again like everything was okay, but not really okay, and I just went on and trudged through my days, and some months later, not anything I would have planned it. I would have never written this script. Seriously. That's why I know we just can't make their bottoms. I mean, I never would have written it. One day, my husband, I don't know what I was going to say, he was struck. He was struck sober, but only for a day. But he was struck sober enough. No, something happened that was powerful for him. I don't want to be silly about it. Something very powerful happened in his life that caught his attention like it had never been caught before. And somebody said the right thing, and he went to a meeting, and I feel foolish even trying to tell you how it happened for him. But some great confluence of it and all, his insides and the spirit and I don't know what made it so that he went to a meeting, and this time he went to an AA meeting. He was going to try and get sober. And he came home, but the try is the key word this day, because he came home and the next morning we had some company over and they brought a bottle of wine. And there were 4 of us, and they poured 4 glasses of wine, and Scott, drank his before he drank mine. He drank his. And I said to him, I said, honey, I don't know what I called him then. Honey, babe, something like that. Meanwhile, what was I really thinking? Person who scares the heck out of me, who I barely know. Is it okay to drink when you're in Alcoholics Anonymous? And he said to me, of course, absolutely. Of course it is. And what he said, and I really do remember this strangely enough, he said to me, Nancy, they're not fanatics. You are allowed to drink, but you are not allowed to get drunk. And I think, I'm trying my hardest to really tell you a little bit of who I am. So I guess I also want to tell you, I used to think I was a clever person. And it's so amazing to me how absolutely stupid I became from this cunning, baffling, powerful disease. That who would ever think that it was okay to drink when you were in Alcoholics Anonymous? But there was something in me that went, okay, I guess that makes sense. All right. And then just began the great start of my life in Al-Anon. Scott got sober. I thought, all right, here's what I expected. I think often of a wonderful woman I used to hear talk called Winnie, who would say she didn't really care if he drank or not. She just wanted him to mind. And I absolutely identify with that. Because he went to meetings and I thought, okay, that means paycheck comes home, dinner, he's home in time for dinner, we all sit down together, the family, he gets a haircut. I don't know what I thought. Start behaving the way I want you to behave. And there was nothing in me that thought that I needed help. Crazy, I know. Nothing in me that thought I needed help. But here's what happened, really, is I started to watch him, and he actually started to look different. He started to tell me, he started to look honest to me. That was seriously very different. I started to not feel like I was being tricked all the time. Not being tricked. Now I know, because I've done an inventory, that feeling of being tricked was deep inside of, that fear of being tricked was deep inside of me. And sometimes it had to do with other people being tricky, and sometimes it was just me all the time thinking, who's messing with me now? Who's messing with me now? But he felt like he was changing a little bit. And also, he made a friend. And his friend was this woman. Her name was Jean. And she went to the same meetings he went to. And she would come to our house. And she was sober for a year, which actually meant nothing to me. But she hadn't had a cigarette in 30 days. That was astounding to me. And so I watched her. I thought, then maybe there's something to this. 30 days without a cigarette. Wow, that's incredible. And she would come to our house. She was older than we are, and she is very much a lady. And I forgot to tell you that our home, that I now was like a hippie / streetwalker. You know what I mean? I hadn't gone to the doctor or a dentist in 15 years. I hadn't worn underwear since 1968. I had long hair and clothes with holes in them, and I didn't know how to keep house either. I had 2 beautiful children, and I didn't know how to keep house at all. And she would come into our house, and she would sit down at the table, the kitchen dining room table, and she would just take her hand and kind of just move all the chazarai, as we say, just move it out of the way. The ashtrays, the Pampers, everything, just out of the way. And she would sit down and she would treat us like humans. And she talked to me about Al-Anon. She told me about Al-Anon. And I remember saying to her, I can't do it. I just can't do it. I forgot to tell you I was a Marxist. I I didn't want to have anything to do. I saw the back of the AA directory, and it said God like 7 times on it, I think. I don't know, but it said the word God a lot. And I was just, I wasn't going to have anything to do with it. And besides that, I didn't like, I had seen the thing about being powerless. And that the Marxist thing is kind of funny, but the powerless thing, I was scared to death of. There was no way I wanted to admit that I was powerless over anything, actually. Anything. While I was, at the same time that I was living on Tobacco Road, but I didn't want to believe I was powerless in any way. And something happened, same thing, I don't know what to tell you, just something happened. And one Sunday night, I found myself in an Al-Anon meeting. I thought there would be 4 other people there. I had no idea. In Los Angeles, that there were more than 4 alcoholics. I soon learned otherwise. I thought they would look like me. I walked into a room full of, this always makes me feel so happy when I say this to myself, full of beautiful people. Mostly women then, but beautiful people. Well-dressed, smiling, clean, friendly, talking to each other, welcoming me. I was astounded. I was astounded that they weren't as degraded as I was. That's really what I felt like. I was astounded that they could be so healthy and come where I came from. So I went to that meeting. I know exactly when it was because I shared, I'm a little embarrassed to say, how many days sober my husband was. That was how I identified. I said, I'm Nancy, and my husband has 39 days. And I did that for a while. Now he has, 39 and 7, because believe me, I only went once a week. So Nancy and my husband has 46 days, and on and on and on I shared how sober my husband was. But, I had my eyes on a certain lady who had 2 children like I did and who was married to an alcoholic and who was having fun and who was given love. I could see people would walk up to her. She would hug them. They hugged her. She shared in a way that was light and felt right to me. And one day there was a 5th step meeting, and she shared about her 5th step. And it was one of those meetings where, at the 5th step, where people tell their 5th step, and I know this happens all the time. Someone says, I was so scared to do my 5th step, but when I said that I had robbed a bank, my sponsor said, I robbed a bank too. I mean, it's usually not robbed a bank, but if I said I had been an unkind daughter, my sponsor said me too. If I said I was promiscuous, my sponsor said me too. But this lady that I was watching, she raised her hand, she shared, she said, I did my 5th step. When I was done, I looked at the lady that I read it to, her sponsor, she said, and my sponsor was absolutely horrified. Horrified. She'd never heard anything like it before in her life. And this also, I have to tell you, this is a lady who didn't do anything so very terrible, but she had a very prim sponsor. But this is the part I love. Not that. That, you might think that was what I loved, but here's the great part. What I loved was that she said, but after she looked at me like that, she said to me, well done. Good job. You're on your way. You've done your 5th step. Go home, sit quietly for a while. Think if you've left anything out. And if you feel that you've done a good job, begin your 6th. And that was, I don't know, it was the most beautiful thing I ever heard in my life. Because I didn't know the phrase right size yet. But what it sounded like to me was being right size. Was not being any crazier than anybody else. Or that it just didn't matter if you were crazier or less crazy than anyone else. So I asked her to be my sponsor. And I'm so, so happy that I did. And I absolutely believe that my success in Al-Anon has had to do with so many things, but sponsorship was a powerful, powerful tool for me. And I think a powerful tool because I was somebody who didn't have relationships. Oh, I also just wanted to say, because I looked at this woman, that before I started, when I was sitting, I looked around, feeling of so many kind people, and one woman just smiled at me in such a beautiful way. And I thought, we really know how to be kind to each other. This woman, her name is Ruby, was so kind to me and so fun. And she did a great thing. And I have to say the word shit. I already said it once. I'm going to say it again when I tell the story. Okay. I forgot to tell you this part of me. I was very controlling as a mother, and I had some things I still think were all right. But my children didn't watch any TV. They didn't eat any sugar. I was like a no dominant culture mom, except I revealed that I was at McDonald's once, right? Oops. But mostly, I was a no dominant culture mom, and and they really didn't have sugar, and they really didn't watch TV. And I used to call Ruby when I was about to do something awful. And awful for me usually meant yell at my kids. And I would call her on the phone and I'd say, oh, Ruby. Actually, usually I'd call her after I did it, unfortunately. That's the truth. I just did it again, Oh, I just did it again. And she said, the first time I remember, she said, come on over. And I went to her house, and I have to say, sometimes I don't do this that often, talk like this that often, but when I look at a big group like this, something fills me up so great, because I know that so many of you have the experience of going to that house for you, whatever that house is for you, that kind of mentor or big sister or mother figure or whatever, that you just go to the house and it just feels, you walk in, it feels so good. You know they're going to take care of you. You just know they're going to take care of you. And I walked into that house, and my little boys were probably 4 and 7 maybe. And she said, come on in, boys. And she had a little kind of sunken den. And she put little did I know it was the TV room. And she set them down directly in front of the television. She put E.T. in the, what do you call that thing, the VCR. And she set a giant bowl of M&Ms in front of them. And she said to them, if you say thanks, you get more shit. So like in 1 second, they got like an adult that said that word. That was such a thrill, and candy and TV. And they've never told me this, but I really think they went, this is a great program, I think is what they thought. Mom, you're doing the right thing. You're doing the right thing. But I know that they heard what she said, because they never forgot the if you say thanks thing. And seriously, 6 months ago, my son Jesse was in our basement getting something out of the storage, and he was talking to me, and I said thanks to him for something, and he said, Mom, you say thanks, you get more shit. So I know it was strong for them, really strong for them. And so I tell you that silly stuff because even though, don't I look a little lighter than I did at the beginning of this talk? There you go. Even though I think that my persona is like, I'm a goat, I'm a Capricorn, and my Chinese year is an ox. I think of myself as being like ironclad, tough and ironclad. But actually, I've lightened up. Al-Anon has warmed me up. And just telling the story warms me up. So, hi, everybody. That was so much fun, what Ellen did at the beginning, don't you think? now that I think of it. Okay, so I got lightened up. I changed. And I started to work the steps. I started to do service. I went to my usual Sunday night meeting. Let me look at the time. I went to my usual Sunday night meeting, and there were two ladies there that said, let's let Nancy do the refreshments. Well, I told you that, like, one of my symptoms of living with alcoholism was somebody's trying to trick you, somebody's trying to pull something over on you. So when they said, let's let Nancy do the refreshments, I thought, thanks a million, but no thanks. Make your coffee? I don't think so. But I didn't say any of that. I said, yes, I'll be glad to do the refreshments. And again, I get that feeling that I know you all know this, but I'm going to tell you anyway. Here's what it did for me. I was there in that kitchen when the person who was having such a terrible time at home that they had to get out of their house and they just had to go to the meeting, and they didn't care that they were going to be a half an hour early, and they didn't care if there was going to be anybody there. They just had to get there. And I had the privilege of being the person that was there when they got there, because I had to turn the hot water, I had to plug the hot water in. And I was the person who had the privilege of being there when a newcomer would come in and say, where's the this, where's the that? It was so great. And also I had the absolute joy of feeding everybody, making food for everybody, thinking about what you'd all like next week. That was new for me. That was really new. What were they like? Oh, remember, she likes chocolate, or she did it. And I started to be a giver. And so, service was just a beautiful crucible, catalyst for that, for a way to make that happen for me. I started to work my steps. Sure didn't want to do a fourth step, but I started to work the steps, because what happened is I kept doing that thing of calling Ruby and saying, I did it again. And one day she said to me, maybe it's time to write this stuff down and to start looking at what they say in AA are the causes and conditions. So I did a fourth step. I wrote it down, and I brought it, and I sat in that same room where I probably ate some M&Ms while I was doing it too. And I gave away my fifth step, and I left out only one thing, the alcoholic. Little mistake. So I went home, and I added the alcoholic. And I came back, and I finished my fifth step with my sponsor. And I didn't have a wild experience, but what happened is I started to say yes more often. Somehow after I did that, I started to say yes more often. And my sponsor called me and she said there was a retreat happening, and I would have never said yes. I would have always said, I'm sorry, I got kids. I got kids. I can't do that. I got kids. And I said yes. So I went to this retreat, and one of the things that I had written in my fourth step, which thank heavens seems so crazy to me now, but seemed so true to me then, was that I was unattractive. Because I grew up in a family of 3 girls, and although we had, as I told you, loving, kind parents, it was also the 40s and the 50s, there were 3 of us. There was a smart one, and a pretty one, and a good one. And I was not the pretty one. And I know I was not the good one, right? So, anyway, so I tell you that because I had written it as a resentment. That's how it showed up on my fourth step. It was a resentment against my parents, and so I thought to myself, boy, how is that ever going to change? How am I ever going to lose that resentment? What an unkind thing they'd done to me. How did they do that to me? And I went to this retreat, and when I walked in, I saw a lady, and I just thought she was the prettiest thing I'd ever seen in my life. And I hooked up with her, and we spent the whole weekend together. We just adored each other. And all the time I looked at her, I thought, she is so great looking. She is so great looking. And at the end of the retreat, everybody's taking pictures, and we were standing next to each other. And someone walked up to us and said, "Are you twins? You look exactly alike." And I thought, I don't know what I thought. I thought, I'm pretty, I guess is what I thought. I thought, oh, thank you. That's what I thought was thank you. Thank you, thank you. So I started, I know that's just such a, kind of a fluffy little 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th experience, but it was a good one. It was a good one for me. And I began to not feel unattractive anymore, and many, many other things changed for me as a result of working my steps. And I, as you might guess, became a very devoted member of Al-Anon. And I went to lots of meetings, and I let myself be sponsored, and I loved sponsoring people. And I thought, I had a little misconception that I was such a good member of Al-Anon, and my husband was such a good member of AA, and we were such good parents that we would not have, that our children, I'm just going to say it boldly, that our children would not be alcoholics. That we would have done the right thing, because, I say every morning I'm powerless, but somehow I didn't quite get that. And I just thought that I wouldn't have, my children wouldn't be alcoholics because of my good behavior. And excuse me one moment. I try my hardest to be very careful when I talk about this, because they are very amazing human beings. But more than anything, what they really are just two individuals who don't need me telling their tale for them, But so I'm going to try my hardest to tell you what their lives meant to me as a member of Al-Anon. Here's how Al-Anon has helped me be the parent of those children. When I get fearful, when I think that I have reason to, fearful is a teeny word. When I think I have reason to absolutely flip out, freak out, and lose my mind with insane fear, rather than calling another doctor for a second opinion because I don't want to be embarrassed and I don't want the neighbors to know, my life is completely different. Now, when I have fears or anxieties about my children, I totally turn myself over to my sisters and brothers in Al-Anon. Totally. I know so many people that have experience in that arena that can help me. And besides people that have experience in that arena, I know so many people that just care for me. They don't have to be parents of maybe alcoholics. I know that I can call anyone and say I'm in fear, because everybody here, I think, understands what that feels like. So that's one big difference, that I'm seriously able to ask for help. The other thing is I learned in Al-Anon, and partly I think I learned it from our suggestion to not give advice. We have a suggestion to not give advice, and what the kind of the underpinnings of that for me has always been that we have so many different stories that were I to say to somebody, you need to stand up to that guy, that might just be the person who's been standing up to that guy for 40 years and needs to back off a little bit. So I always get that we all come here with different temperaments and different stories and different insides. So I was able to also see that about my children, that they are very complex humans, full of all kinds of things. They're not just maybe alcoholics. They're musicians, and they're artists, and they're students, and they're good teachers, and they're good sons, and they're all kinds of things make them two human beings. And there is a thing about them that concerns me that I can talk to you about. And I have changed, but I still wish I had Al-Anon spies in New York. Who would keep track of my son? And in fact, I was somewhere in New York, and I kind of made friends with this lady, thinking she's young enough. That's what I thought. She's young enough. Maybe I could somehow hook her up with my son who's in New York, and she could watch him for me. So as much as I totally study, my morning practice every day is to learn how to release. I mean, among other things, it's to learn how to release and learn how to let go of the people I love in my life. But there's just that other little part of it too. I want to tell you something weird. That's I don't know if weird's the right word. Can I tell a little about us? About what's going on? Okay. Scott and I love each other, and we tell each other that we adore each other, and I know that that's true. However, we don't really know that well how to sustain an intimate relationship. Not something we ever learned how to do, and we've been working on it for 19 years. Sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly, right? We've been working on it for 28 years, right? But we've been working on it in Al-Anon for 19 years, and Alcoholics Anonymous for 19 years. And here's what I'm seeing lately: is that there's something in me that because I totally, like the blob, want to completely be all over him and be in charge of everything he does and tell him how to do everything and walk be like the, I think it's some kind of Star Trek, like the cloak, what was it? A cloaking device, right? Isn't that what it is? The cloaking device. I want to be like the cloaking device and follow him everywhere he goes. And in order to not do that, I've really backed up, maybe too far, and I've cut myself off from him a little bit. I'm trying my hardest not to control him, and I haven't let myself enjoy a husband. You know what I mean? What it is to have a husband, what a partnership with a husband feels like. And so that's today what I'm praying for. I'm doing a thing, I've heard it from you folks. I'm like studying love. I'm in a love class. And my textbook is Courage to Change. And so I go to the back of Courage to Change and I look up love. And every day I'm reading about love. Because I want to learn how to give love, how to be a loving partner. What a glorious life, huh? That would be what I'm working on. I'm working on being loving. I really don't have anything else to say. Now is the time. When I was a kid, I loved to be on stage. I loved it. And I used to go to this camp called Detroit Recreation Camp, great camp, and I used to be the star of every show. And only when I was like 40 did I turn around to Scott and realize that Detroit Recreation Camp was a camp that was a city camp for blind and deaf and legless. And there were a few of us that could see and hear and sing. That's why I was like Maria in everything you could be a Maria in. So now, what happens to me after I think, actually what I think happens, I don't know if you can identify, is that when I get really down to exactly what's happening in me right now, then I want to like belt a song or something and just not be Nancy anymore. I'd rather like, But I'm not going to do it. Because now I don't sound like Natalie Wood anymore. Now I sound like Ethel Merman. So there you go. There you go. That's the other thing I'm learning. I'm learning how to grow. Chronologically grow. I'm learning how to grow, and I'm learning that from members of Al-Anon. Okay, I'm going to stop. I love this program. I sure hope I told you that I didn't. I'm developing a relationship with a higher power. I work on it all the time. Of course, it's got to be different from everybody else's. But of course, yours are all different from everybody else's too, right? And I work on it all the time, and I pray. I'm praying to be willing to experience a relatedness relationship with a higher power. That's what I'm working on today. And I thank all of you. Thanks.